Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. My trusty Samsung TV from 2015 finally gave up in March 2024, so I invested in a new LG OLED smart TV. After about 3 weeks of use, I noticed that my family had completely abandoned traditional TV channels. My teenager Sarah was glued to Netflix, my wife Lisa preferred Amazon Prime, and I found myself binge-watching sports on various streaming apps. It became clear that paying for cable TV was just throwing money away. The tricky part was that my TV service was bundled with my mobile plan and internet through Value Connect Communications. They had this exclusive premium customer program with a dedicated service team. It took 5 frustrating calls to their team to figure out a solution. "I'm afraid we can't just disconnect the TV service, sir," said Mark, the customer service rep. "The best we can do is convert it to prepaid, and then you can choose not to recharge." After the conversion, I kept getting these automated text messages. "Recharge now to continue enjoying your premium channels." Then finally, a message about returning the set-top box arrived. I replied, and within 3 days, someone picked it up. I thought that was the end of it. But then the real circus began. Random call center agents started calling about recharging my account. These calls felt different from the professional premium team, more aggressive and persistent. After some research online, I discovered this was a common practice in my area. Value Connect had outsourced these retention calls to third-party agencies who worked from outdated printed lists of inactive subscribers. "Sir, your TV service is due for recharge," one caller said. "Actually, I've disconnected the service," I replied. "But sir, you're in our active customer database. That database must be outdated because I've already returned the box. Sir, please recharge to avoid service interruption." After several such pointless conversations, I changed tactics. "You know what?" I told the next caller. "I've been having terrible issues with my TV connection. The box keeps showing error code 404 and nobody has helped despite multiple complaints." The third caller took the bait. "Sir, this is serious. I'll schedule a technician right away." Within hours, a field technician named Dave showed up at my door. I welcomed him with a cold soda and explained the situation. He burst out laughing. "Man, this is genius," Dave said, wiping tears from his eyes. "Keep doing this. Trust me, they'll update their records eventually." 8 technician visits later, I finally got a call from their supervisor, Jason. "Sir," he said, clearly irritated, "why do you keep requesting technician visits when you don't even have an active connection?" I emailed him all my recorded calls with their agents. He wasn't pleased, but the harassment finally decreased. Now I might get a call every few weeks, and I just stick to my script about error code 404. Sometimes when they try booking a technician, I see a note gets added to my account. "Customer has no active service, do not contact." The funny part is, I've probably cost them more in technician visits than they would have made from my monthly subscription. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be writing one of these stories, but here we are. This happened over the course of several months last year, and it still amazes me how entitled some people can be. Some background. I inherited a beautiful lakeside cabin from my grandfather when he passed away 5 years ago. It's been in our family for 3 generations. My great-grandfather built it himself in the 1950s. It's not enormous or fancy, but it's a cozy 2-bedroom cabin right on Lake Mitchell in Michigan, with its own dock and about an acre of wooded land. The property taxes aren't cheap, but it's worth every penny for the peaceful weekends I get to spend there with my wife and kids. Enter Karen, not her real name, who moved into the house next door about a year ago. At first, she seemed nice enough. The typical friendly wave when we'd see each other, nothing unusual. That changed quickly after she realized our cabin had direct lake access, while her property was set back about 200 feet from the water with no private dock. The first red flag came when she started dropping by whenever we were at the cabin, usually with some flimsy excuse about borrowing sugar or asking about local restaurants. She'd always end up lingering on our dock, making comments about how lucky we were to have such prime lakefront property. Then came the offers to buy. At first, they were somewhat reasonable attempts. "You know, if you ever think about selling, I'd love to make an offer." I always politely declined. "Sorry, but this cabin has been in my family for generations. We're not interested in selling." But Karen wouldn't take no for an answer. The requests became more frequent and aggressive. "Come on, you don't even live here full time. I'd make much better use of it." "Name your price. I can pay cash." My kids deserve a lakefront property more than yours do. They're competitive swimmers. I started avoiding her when possible, but she'd literally wait by our driveway when she saw our car pull up. My wife suggested we install security cameras, which turned out to be a very wise decision. The situation came to a head last July. We hadn't been up to the cabin in about 3 weeks due to work commitments. When we arrived for a planned weekend stay, we found Karen sitting on our dock in our lounge chairs, drinking wine with 2 friends. I approached them, trying to stay calm. "Excuse me, but this is private property. You need to leave." Karen looked at me like I was the crazy one. "Excuse you, but I bought this cabin last week. You need to leave before I call the police." I was dumbfounded. "What are you talking about? I never sold you anything." Karen stood up, wine glass still in hand. "Yes, you did. We signed the papers last Wednesday. I have proof." My wife was already calling the police while I continued talking to Karen. "That's impossible. I haven't even been here in 3 weeks, and I certainly haven't signed any papers." Karen's friends were starting to look uncomfortable, but Karen doubled down. "Well, clearly you forgot. I paid you $275,000 cash for this place. Now get off my property before I have you arrested for trespassing." She actually pulled out her phone and dialed cops right there. "Yes, hello. There's a man and his family trespassing on my property. They're threatening me and refusing to leave. I just bought this house and they're claiming it's theirs. Please hurry." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife had also called the police, so we just waited. Within about 15 minutes, 2 patrol cars pulled up. The first officer, Officer Johnson, approached us. We received 2 calls about a property dispute. Karen immediately launched into her version of events. "Officer, I purchased this cabin last week for $275,000 cash. I have the paperwork right here." She pulled out what looked like some official-looking documents from her purse. I calmly explained, "Officer, I'm the legal owner of this property. It's been in my family for generations, and I have never sold it or even considered selling it. I can show you my deed and property tax records right now." I pulled up the county property records on my phone, showing my name as the current owner. I also had a folder in the cabin with all the important documents, including the deed and recent tax payments. Officer Johnson looked at Karen's paperwork. Even from where I was standing, I could see it looked off. The officer's expression said it all. "Ma'am, these documents appear to be fabricated. The notary stamp is clearly photocopied, and this isn't even the correct format for a Michigan property deed." Karen's face went through about 5 different shades of red. "That's impossible. I paid cash. I have witnesses." She gestured to her friends, who were already gathering their things and quickly walking away. "Don't you dare leave!" Karen screamed at them. "Tell them about the sale!" One of her friends turned around. "Karen, you told us you bought this cabin legally. We don't want any part of this." The second officer had been running our information, and things quickly got worse for Karen. It turned out she had been making similar false claims about property ownership in 2 other counties, and there was already an open investigation. "Ma'am, please put your hands behind your back," Officer Johnson said. "You're under arrest for filing a false police report, attempted fraud, and criminal trespassing." Karen completely lost it. "You can't arrest me. I bought this property. I deserve it more than they do. They don't even live here full time." As they led her to the patrol car, she was screaming about how unfair it all was and how her children were competitive swimmers who needed lake access for training. Mind you, I had never once seen any children at her house. But the story doesn't end there. Over the next few days, we discovered just how far Karen had gone in her delusion. She had created fake sale documents using templates from the internet, told several neighbors she had bought our cabin, listed our cabin address as her residence on multiple forms, started forwarding her mail to our cabin, made duplicate keys to our locks. We had to change all of them. Apparently hosted several parties at our dock when we weren't there. The security cameras had caught her repeatedly entering our property, using our dock, and even trying to enter the cabin through windows. She had been doing this for weeks while we were away. We filed for a restraining order immediately, which was granted given the evidence. The prosecutor charged her with multiple counts of criminal trespassing, attempted fraud, filing false police reports, and harassment. During the legal proceedings, we learned that Karen had a history of similar behavior in other states. She had previously tried to claim ownership of a beach house in Florida and a mountain cabin in Colorado using the same basic scheme. Create fake documents, move in when the owners are away, then call the police when they show up. The court case was pretty straightforward. Between our documentation, security camera footage, and Karen's history of similar attempts, the prosecutor had an easy time proving the charges. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that she genuinely believed she had purchased the property due to mental health issues, but the evidence of premeditation was too strong. The judge wasn't impressed with Karen's excuses. "Ma'am, your pattern of behavior shows clear intent to defraud. This wasn't a misunderstanding. You deliberately created false documents and repeatedly lied to law enforcement. This court cannot ignore such blatant disregard for property rights and the law." Karen was sentenced to 18 months in prison, ordered to pay $25,000 in restitution for property damage and legal fees, and given 5 years of probation. She's also banned from coming within 1,000 feet of our property. The best part? She had to sell her house to pay the restitution and legal fees. The new neighbors are a lovely retired couple who actually respect property boundaries. We've since installed better security cameras, motion sensors, and reinforced locks on all doors and windows. We also started a neighborhood watch program with the other lakefront property owners since it turned out Karen had been trespassing on several other properties as well. My wife and I still laugh about some of the ridiculous things Karen said during her meltdown, especially the competitive swimmer excuse. We've never seen any evidence that she even had children, let alone Olympic hopefuls. The whole experience taught us a valuable lesson about document security and property rights. We've made sure all our ownership documentation is properly filed and easily accessible, and we keep multiple copies in secure locations. As for Karen, last I heard she moved to Arizona after getting out of prison. I almost feel sorry for whatever neighbors she has now. Almost. The silver lining is that we've become much closer with our other neighbors through this ordeal. We now have regular cookouts with the families on either side of us, and everyone keeps an eye out for suspicious activity. Our cabin remains a peaceful retreat for our family, though we did add a prominent private property no trespassing sign at the end of the driveway. Not that it would stop another Karen, but at least we can say we warned them. The most ironic part? If Karen had just been a normal, friendly neighbor, we probably would have let her use our dock occasionally. Many of our other neighbors do because they just ask politely and respect our property. Looking back, I'm grateful for the security cameras. Without that evidence, it would have been our word against hers, and who knows how much more damage she might have done to our property. I still find it amazing that someone could be so entitled as to think they could just claim ownership of someone else's property and call the police on the actual owners. The level of delusion is truly mind-boggling. These days, we joke about it when we arrive at the cabin. Hope no one bought our place while we were gone. But we also make sure to document everything and keep our security systems up to date. You never know when another Karen might show up claiming she bought your property. The whole experience has become one of those family stories we'll probably tell for years to come. My kids already love telling their friends about the crazy lady who tried to steal our cabin. As frustrating and stressful as it was at the time, we can laugh about it now. Plus, our cabin is more secure than ever. We have great new neighbors, and Karen is someone else's problem. I suppose the moral of the story is, always document everything, install security cameras, and never underestimate the entitlement of some people. Oh, and apparently having competitive swimmer children, real or imagined, doesn't give you the right to steal someone's lakefront property. Who knew? Update. Entitled neighbor who called police demanding my lakeside cabin, the aftermath. It's been about a year since I posted my story about Karen, who tried to claim she bought our lakeside cabin, and a lot has happened since then. I thought you all might be interested in an update. First off, Karen did not do well in prison. Her lawyer tried to appeal the conviction, claiming she had temporary mental health issues, but the appeals court upheld the original sentence. The prosecutor had too much evidence showing this was a pattern of behavior, not a one-time breakdown. While she was serving her time, we discovered even more about her past schemes. 2 other families reached out to me after seeing local news coverage of her case. Turns out she had pulled similar stunts in Florida and Colorado, but the previous victims had settled out of court to avoid the hassle of a trial. Their stories were almost identical to ours. She would create fake purchase documents, try to move in when the owners were away, then call the police claiming ownership. The prosecutor was very interested in this information and used it to block her early release request. Here's how that hearing went down. Prosecutor: Your Honor, we have evidence of at least 3 other instances where Miss Karen's last name attempted similar property fraud schemes. Karen's attorney: Objection, Your Honor. These alleged incidents aren't relevant to the current case. Judge: Overruled. This information speaks directly to the defendant's pattern of behavior and likelihood of rehabilitation. Karen tried to interrupt. Those people wanted to sell to me. They just changed their minds. Judge, Miss Karen's last name. Please do not speak unless addressed directly. Based on this new evidence, your request for early release is denied. You will serve your full sentence. But here's where it gets interesting. While Karen was in prison, her ex-husband contacted us. Apparently, she had done something similar during their marriage, trying to claim ownership of a neighbor's beach house in California. He had divorced her over it and got full custody of their kids. Yes, she actually did have children, but they lived with their father across the country. So much for the competitive swimmer's story. Her ex-husband was incredibly apologetic and offered to help pay for our security upgrades. We declined, but appreciated the gesture. He shared some interesting insights into Karen's history. She's always been obsessed with waterfront property, he told us. She grew up in a wealthy family that lost everything, including their lake house, when she was a teenager. Ever since then, she's been trying to recreate that lifestyle, no matter what it takes. Not that this excuses her behavior, but it at least explains some of her fixation on our cabin. The restitution payments have been coming in regularly, garnished from her prison wages and later her post-release income, and we've used the money to install an even better security system. We now have cameras that send alerts to our phones if anyone enters the property, plus reinforced doors and windows. The really satisfying part came after her release. Karen tried to move back to our area, but her probation officer denied her request due to the restraining order. She had to relocate to Arizona, where she's under strict supervision, but she couldn't help herself. She tried to contact us through a fake social media account. I know you think you won, but that cabin should have been mine. My father had one just like it. You don't deserve it. We forwarded the message to her probation officer, and she got a stern warning that any further contact would violate her probation terms. She hasn't tried to contact us since. The best development has been the changes in our lake community. After Karen's case made the local news, several other lakefront communities reached out to learn about our security measures. We ended up creating a network of property owners who share information about suspicious activity and potential scams. Our local police department even asked me to speak at a community meeting about property fraud prevention. I shared our story and the importance of documentation and security cameras. The officer who arrested Karen was there and added some professional advice. Document everything, Officer Johnson said. Photos, videos, written records, it all matters. Mrs. Karen's last name's case was so solid because the victims had clear evidence of ownership in her trespassing. The whole experience has actually brought our lake community closer together. We now have regular get-togethers where we discuss security updates and share information. The retired couple who bought Karen's house has become close friends, and we often have dinner together on our deck. Yes, the same one Karen tried to claim as her own. Our property values have actually increased because our lake community is now known for its strong security measures and close-knit neighborhood watch program. Several real estate agents have told us they specifically mention our security network when showing houses in the area. We've made some improvements to the cabin, too. Besides the security upgrades, we added a new boat dock and renovated the kitchen. It feels good to invest in the property, knowing it's well protected. My grandfather would be proud to see how we've protected and improved his legacy. We even found some old photos of him building the cabin, which we've framed and hung on the walls. It's a reminder of why we fought so hard to protect our family property. The legal system worked exactly as it should in our case. The prosecutor told us that our thorough documentation and security footage made it an airtight case. They've actually used our case as an example in training sessions about property fraud. Our lawyer helped us set up a trust to protect the cabin for future generations. This makes it even harder for anyone to try any fraud schemes in the future, he explained. With the property in a trust, any transfer would require multiple signatures and legal procedures. It's practically fraud-proof. We've had several people ask to buy the cabin, legitimately this time, offering way above market value, but we always decline. This place isn't just property to us, it's family history. Besides, after defending it from Karen, we feel even more connected to it. My kids have learned some valuable lessons from this experience. They understand the importance of standing up for what's right and not letting bullies win, even when those bullies are adults. They've also learned about property rights and the legal system in a very practical way. The other day, my daughter said something that made me laugh. Dad, remember when that lady tried to steal our cabin because her kids were competitive swimmers, but she didn't even have any kids here? Yes, we can laugh about it now, but we're also more vigilant. We keep all our property documents updated and readily available. We maintain our security systems and cameras, we know our neighbors, and look out for each other's properties. Karen's story has become a cautionary tale in our area. Local real estate agents warn new buyers about the importance of property documentation and security measures. They often reference the lake cabin incident, as it's now known, as an example of why these precautions matter. Our story even made it into a legal journal as a case study on property fraud. The article highlighted how modern security technology and proper documentation can protect property owners from fraudulent claims. Looking back, I'm glad we stood our ground and pursued legal action instead of just trying to make the problem go away. It would have been easier to settle out of court like Karen's previous victims, but that would have just enabled her to continue her schemes elsewhere. The prosecutor told us that our case has made it easier to pursue similar fraud cases. Your documentation and evidence set a clear precedent for how these cases should be handled. So here we are, a year later, with a more secure cabin, a stronger community, and the satisfaction of knowing we helped stop someone who had been taking advantage of property owners for years. To anyone dealing with similar situations, document everything, invest in security cameras, know your legal rights, and don't be afraid to stand up to entitled people who try to take what's yours. The legal system works if you have the evidence to support your case. Our cabin remains our family's peaceful retreat, now with extra security and an even stronger connection to our community. Karen's attempt to steal it only made us appreciate it more and helped us protect it better for future generations. As for Karen, last we heard, she's working a minimum wage job in Arizona to pay her restitution and legal fees. Her probation officer checks in with us periodically to confirm she's staying away from our property and maintaining her payments. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and knowing you stood up for what's right. We still enjoy our lakeside weekends, now with better security and peace of mind. And yes, we still joke about checking to make sure nobody bought our cabin while we were away, but now we have the cameras to prove they didn't. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.